Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Desaparecidos record, Payola. Desaparecidos, Nebraska band, back at it again with a new record after over just a decade of studio album silence. Now, going into this LP, potentially you are already familiar with the band's frontman, Conor Oberst, aka the Bright Eyes guy. And I guess lately he's been giving the whole Bright Eyes thing a bit of a rest, concentrating on coming together with some singles for Desaparecidos. He had a solo album under his own name last year. And some of those Desa singles he was dropping back in 2012 were pretty great. So I was pretty psyched and really just kind of sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting for him to actually get around to putting together a full-length record for this project. And, here we are, yay! Now, it's like been over 10 years since the last full-length LP, so of course the new album isn't going to have like the same sound and the same vibe, like just too much time has passed. But this group is still making loud, visceral, in-your-face rock music, topped with just impassioned, shouted vocals. I wouldn't call the music purely punk, but it's punk-ish. And on the debut record, you got your occasional socially aware or politically charged lyric, but politics and just the world at large really seems to be the major theme at play from beginning to end with Payola. Pretty much every track on this LP has a point of view to get across or like an angle or an agenda to push. But I wouldn't say these lyrics like make me wince or turn around in the other direction or anything like that, because a lot of the time I do end up agreeing with what this album philosophically is trying to say or state. Mostly I like the performances on this record. There are some explosive choruses here, some really just over-the-top vocal performances, some really great drum fills, and bright, burning, loud guitar leads. So it's not like the music on this record is necessarily bad or overshadowed by the messages going on in the lyrics. This is obviously not the first rodeo for frontman Conor Oberst, so he's used to sort of playing that balancing act between message and music. And I suspected going into this new LP he would succeed at that once again because of just how well he's done it in the past. But even though my fears of the music sort of being overshadowed by just very preachy lyrics weren't confirmed, what did kind of end up happening is that I just don't really feel like the lyrics came out that great. Often they kind of succumb to the very narrow-minded left-right debate of US politics. Also, I think the album's sound doesn't necessarily lend itself to the rowdiness and the rebelliousness that it tries to portray. Its shots at the status quo, whether it be racist or the 1% or capitalism. A lot of what this album sings about and says just kind of reads like MSNBC, the album. But to go back to what I was saying about the sound, I feel like this album's really aggressive attempts are often kind of usurped by the fact that the production is so cleanly put together. There's also a lot of compression thrown onto these drums and guitars, just making the music feel louder than I think it really is. I mean, it all just really leaves the music here feeling anything but raw. I went into this LP sort of hoping it would be more blood pumping, which I think it should have been given the blood-curdling screams at the end of a track like Ralphie's Cut. And even when the record actually serves up a kind of novel message or point of view on the song Slacktivist, which is, I think, a completely necessary song in the internet age of activism, we have Conor Oberst delivering against these lyrics one of the worst instrumentals on the entire record, where the guitars, the very lazy group vocals, and the keyboards just all kind of smudge together in this really unpleasurable way. Plus, not all the instrumentation here feels like it's completely syncing up in the way it should. Or the track Search the Search is another moment on this LP where I'm getting some of my favorite lyrics. This track is a really funny and clever approach to just writing a song about just spying and just an invasion of privacy. But this track's aggressive guitars and drums are matched with like these really sugary, sweet lead melodies that just really throw the vibe of the track off. There are just a lot of spots here where the sound just does not completely just match up with the aggression of the lyrics. And again, the rebellious tone of this album, like on the song Von Mauer Massacre, where I kind of feel like we're getting some really bratty arena rock and hard rock. And again, the compression, the flattening compression, the oppressive compression on this record kind of comes around to bite the sound of this album in the ass once again, as it leaves this song and many others on here just feeling like they have no dynamics or body or flavor whatsoever, which is kind of disheartening because a guy like Conor Oberst is usually about finesse and subtlety and dynamics in his songs, but he's obviously taking a vacation with that on this new record over here. Finally, the record closes off with a track called Anonymous, which when I saw the title, I was afraid it might actually be about, the internet-based group Anonymous, and it in fact is. And yeah, I mean, it's probably the most lyrically shameful moment on the entire record. Personally, I don't really have anything against the 4chan-born activist/hacktivist group, but I feel like this is kind of an example of Oberst and company on this record just being so desperate to embrace or just acknowledge any kind of counterculture that there is to acknowledge on this record. To sort of hear Conor Oberst singing and chanting the anonymous code as if like he's representing them in some kind of way was just a really cringe-worthy moment on this record. If there's anything definitively I could say about Anonymous is that they would hate this song. Now, as I said earlier, tracks like MARIKKKOPA and BACKSELL, there are some great tracks in the track listing here that sort of overcome the lackluster production. I think the track Te Amo Camila Vallejo is fantastic as well. But again, I feel like we're just kind of getting an instance of a track overcoming just all the stuff that is just bogging this album down in terms of its enjoyability. Just the really flat production, the lack of actually refreshing political and social perspectives in the track listing here on a record that is just trying to be so political and so socially aware on every single track. I just wish this album had something just a little bit more out of the box to say, and that the guitars and the instrumentation sounded a little bit more organic. I think, these small changes would have made a world of difference in terms of this record's enjoyability, but as a result of the current state of these things, this album just really ended up being a bit of a trudge for me. I'm feeling a light to decent 5 on this thing. Transition. If you've given this project a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Little Ugly Mane.